Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of The Rugger. My name is Nate. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the rugby coming up this weekend, mainly about Ireland versus South Africa. But before I get into that, I just want to talk a little bit about the game against Australia last week. How did it go? In short, it was good. It was kind of like if the Irish rugby team was a company, their stock went up. A good bit, not a massive, huge, significant amount, but definitely a big improvement. So if you had shares in Ireland as a company, you'd be very pleased with yourself. So it was just an emphatic win against the Australians. Now, to be fair, I think Australia are just really exhausted at this point and can't wait for their season to end. It's been pretty long between the Rugby Championship, the Lions Tour, and now these end of year internationals. You can just see they kind of have one foot on the plane. But still, for Ireland, it was a great performance. A lot of standout people really raising their hand. I think the real revelation of the week, the real talk of the town has been MACK, who really just stepped up to 15 as a fullback. You know, we're always used to him being a winger on the right. He's been great for Ireland throughout the years, but kind of dropped off the radar the last year or two, really since the World Cup, because he just had injuries and, you know, it just wasn't looking like his A game as before. But the game against Australia, he really just kind of reignited that fire. And I think he's better for Ireland. He makes Ireland better as a team. He just seems to have some kind of youthful exuberance about him that just really goes well with the squad. He scored 3 tries in 25 minutes. I've never seen any player do that, not like outside of Ireland, just in general, in international rugby. I've never seen a player do that, have a hat-trick before. So it was really exciting. Everybody just loved it. And I think Jameson Gibson Park did it with Leinster earlier on this year for club rugby. So I did see that hat-trick, but never like this on the international stage. So it was really just a kind of coming home for him. So really, all of a sudden now, Hugo Keenan has a bit of a rivalry on his hands. But there's a knock-on effect to that as well. If MACK is really going to be a strong contender for 15, it frees up Osborne, who really originally was supposed to be a centre. And there's always talk about Ireland centres being in short supply, or maybe not as much short supply, but long in the tooth, like Bundy Aki and Robbie Henshaw. So it's a very interesting ripple effect this has. If MACK can keep up this form for fullback, we might be able to see Osborne put into the centres instead, which would be great. It would be really refreshing. But yeah, it's a great win for Ireland. Sam Prendergast had probably his best game in the green jersey, so good for him. It just seemed to really take good control of that game, really good direction, really just good string pulling. Looked like it really came together for him because he hasn't had a great start in the autumn internationals. Didn't really fire too many shots when he played against New Zealand. And even when Jack Crowley came on after Sam went off, he played his part as well. So it really didn't feel like it was like a rivalry as such, like who's good, who's bad for our 10s. It just felt like it was the first game they really complemented each other really well, whether or not who was starting. It was just as good as finish as it was a start. So really good sign that we're figuring out our 10s and that chemistry, that balance, that equilibrium. So well done to Ireland. Really kind of silenced a lot of critics, which is great. But let's look at the lineup for tomorrow. So it's a big game. I've got a little stick today just to point at some names, but the game against South Africa, people have been waiting for pretty much the whole month. So it's going to, you know, if Ireland win, it's great. It kind of saves their season. 3 out of 4 isn't too bad. If they lose, if it's 2 out of 4, a lot of questions are going to be asked. So Ireland are under pressure. But you could say, because South Africa are doing so well, they're under a similar amount of pressure just from the history. But before I get into the history, let's just look at who was picked. So I really didn't have to erase too many names from last week from the chalkboard, because Ireland being Ireland, really pick the usual suspects a lot of the time. But there's a few changes. This time, Andrew Porter, he will be starting at loose head, which is great. Sheehan and Furlong, they're not going anywhere, same as last week. So that's a very predictable but strong front row. Again, same with James Ryan and Ty Byrne, same as last week. And then a little bit of a difference this time for the back row. Ryan Bard, who played great last week against Australia, he's in the same position in the back row. Caelan Doris is going to be at number 8, his proper position. And then Josh Van der Fleer seems to have recovered from his hamstring, which is great because he is really our 7 set in stone. So that's the front pack. Then going down, we've got a Leinster halfback duo with the Munster halfbacks on the bench. So we've got Jameson Gibson Park for the scrum half. We've got Sam in a fly half. And then for our centres, we've got Bundyaki and Ringrose. So Bundyaki, I don't know, I feel like he's starting to turn into an impact player off the bench just because he's getting a little bit long in the tooth. But they're playing him first, I think, this week because of really process of elimination. There's really kind of a lot of casualties there for the centres. So they kind of had to go with Bundy. Still, he's a great player. He just seems to be, I don't know, just tailing off a little bit in his performances compared to what he was in the 2023 World Cup. But we'll see. You know, you never know what you're going to get with him. But Ringrose and him, they've always been a very effective combination in the past. So I like that they're using these two guys and going back to basics a bit. Then we got James Lowe and Tommy O'Brien for our wingers, same as last week. And they're keeping Mack Hansen on for fullback naturally after that performance. He got player of the match last week. So not too many changes, to be honest, but looking like a good, strong pack. A lot of experience beating South Africa on this team, remember. There's a lot of similarities with this squad, with the squad that was in the 2023 World Cup. That game in the group stage, probably one of the best games of rugby ever. So it's good that these guys are coming back from it. Then for our replacements, we've got Ronan Kelleher, we've got Paddy McCarthy and Finlay Bealham for the front row replacements. Then we've got Jack Conan and Keane Prendergast for the back row replacements. I think Jack Conan is a good call to have on the bench. Just think that he's better off the bench. Keane Prendergast, he really has been, I suppose you could say, unfairly ignored this autumn just because there's been so many good performances. Mack Hansen, Ryan Bird. But he always steps up every time he comes onto the pitch off the bench. And I really hope that he's going to be staying in the mix because it's great to have him. And then we got our Munster halfbacks off the bench. Jack Crowley and Craig Casey. And, which is, I think that's 2 hours, sorry. Tom Farrell, who is a little bit of a success story this autumn, you know, being a 32-year-old centre, just shows you that dreams do come true. He's on the bench for South Africa, so clearly he's made a good impression with Andy Farrell. So great to see him on the bench. Really hope he makes good impact. So I have a theory that really South Africa are going to go for Sam Prendergast early on in the game. I think it's going to be one of those real claret, blood-soaked driven games that South Africa like to play. If they take out Sam Prendergast for whatever reason, if he just, you know, is off, Jack Crowley slots in straight away. So really, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. But I think it's actually better to play Sam. A lot of people are saying, you know, Jack Crowley's a bigger player, he's heavier, he's better at tackling, all that. But if Sam is able to pull the strings like he did against Australia, I think it's the right call. And just see what happens. And if he gets injured, look, big deal. You know, it's the big leagues, so he knows what he signed up for. And so does Andy Farrell. So I think just let it play out, just see what happens. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Will there be another red card for South Africa? They've had 2 red cards now in a row, 2 games in a row. One for France, and then the week after last week, which was Italy. Didn't seem to bother them at all. They seem to do quite well a man down. I'd be surprised if they got another red card, but I do think it's timing in nicely, this kind of controversy with the red cards and this game against Ireland, because if you look at the history, it's a real grudge match between Ireland and South Africa the last number of years. Andy Farrell did a press conference on his selection, and I think he was just finally asked one too many questions about Sam Prendergast and his tackling, because he was just like, guys, come on, you know, let's just, you know, I do this with everybody. I think about my selections very thoroughly. You know, you could see he was getting annoyed. Now, I handled it well. He always plays his cards very close to his chest. In fact, he should really do seminars to people who normally have to do press conferences. He's really up there with the best. He's the total polar opposite of Eddie Jones, who kind of wears his heart in his sleeve and just kind of F's and blinds and says whatever he wants at any time, which is why I love the guy. But Andy is a lot more reserved. He's a lot more calculated. They must have good PR training, because he rarely betrays much information that would be, you know, that would have a good story to it in his press conferences. So, but you could see he was just getting a little bit fed up. And I see where he's coming from. You know, we're tired of these questions. It's always about Sam Prendergast and the tackling. And with a position like number 10, you know, it's a lot more. There's like 10 different components that makes that machine works as a position. So I understand where it's coming from. But let's go to the history between Ireland and South Africa. It's a bit mental. You know, they haven't won in the Aviva Stadium since 2012. So that's 13 years. That's enough time for a baby to be born, grow up a few years, and then a few years more, and then at 13, you know, you're in the throes of puberty. That's a long time. That's a whole teenager lifespan of not winning in the Aviva. So you can tell that they are determined to win this. But I just think that Ireland have the edge this week. Everybody's writing Ireland off. Everybody's saying South Africa's going to win, but I do think Ireland are going to edge it out. That's just my humble prediction. But, you know, Rassie Erasmus said it himself. I think it was a couple of years ago. He said that, and quite rightly, he said, the World Cup is Ireland's bogey tournament, but Ireland is South Africa's bogey team. So there's always bogeys going around somewhere. You know, there's always some hoodoo in some kind of combination of tournaments or of teams, whatever. You could say that South Africa is New Zealand's bogey team, you know, just as well. And they seem to be very good at beating New Zealand. But definitely it seems that Ireland are the bogey team. If you look at the history records out of the last 5 encounters, South Africa have just won that game in that series last year in South Africa. It was pretty, and it wasn't even a close score. It was 27-20 to South Africa in a controversial game full of TMO calls. James Lowe had just one of the wackiest games ever. He was really good. He was really bad in places. And it just set it up for this, you know, great kind of sequel in the second game that was played in Durban, where Ireland famously got that drop goal. Kieran Frawley slots it in, and then Ireland win by 1 point, and it just devastated South Africa. You know, they were just, because they really wanted to just have this comprehensive 2-0 series, and that's why everybody said, why isn't it a 3-game series last year? It would have been a great decider, but it just kind of left things in limbo. So it's a really good way to cap off the internationals. A really good way to just say who is really, you know, unbeatable top dog. And you could say that's South Africa already. Absolutely. They're on an absolute winning streak. They're just blitzing. Okay, so they lost a couple of games over the Rugby Championship, but the game against France was just so comprehensive. A man down for a whole half of rugby against, you know, France. They're supposed to be one of the best teams in the world. It just really was, you know, emphatic victory. So it's spicy, very, very spicy. It's Rassie's last hurdle, really, just to cement to say this is one of the best teams in rugby history. So, yeah, we'll see. South Africa's team, you know, a lot of usual heavies. This is a good team Ireland are going up against. Got people like Malcolm Marx. Some people say the best hooker in the world is Dan Sheehan. Others say Marx. You'd be right in both respects. That's a really good face-off. You've got Eben Etzebeth, always just this massive giant of a man. Sia Khaleesi, one of the best captains in history. You got Cheslin Colby, one of the best wingers, you know, in World Rugby right now. RG Snyman, Manny Leboeuf, who hasn't been playing fantastic lately, but still very effective 10. So I'm just saying, as a rough prediction, Ireland by 8 points. I know that's really being an optimist, but that's just my random prediction. It's going to be on at 5:40 on Saturday. Weather is going to probably be rainy, but I looked at the report there, and actually for the first half it could be okay, but I'd say there's going to be rain coming in the second half. That could change things, but we'll see. The other games, we have Wales against New Zealand at 3:10 p.m. tomorrow on Saturday. So Wales have just beaten Japan just last week by 1 point in a very clutch penalty. So they're going to be on the up a bit. I think, you know, if they just have a good performance, get some points in New Zealand, they'd be happy with that. New Zealand are going to be absolutely seething because they just lost to England last week kind of called this, but England just played a very tactically efficient game against New Zealand. Had George Ford had 2 drop goals in 2 minutes. They kept the score ticking over. It was a really good performance from England, and it was coming a long time. And I have to say, no team does stand up to the haka like England does. They're just pros at it at this stage. You know, they did the V again, same V that they did against New Zealand in the 2019 semi-final, which they won. And you could see Henry Pollock was licking his lips. You know, it was really just good grudge match stuff. They really just didn't care and fronted up to them, answered the haka. There was some controversy about that. Justin Marshall, one of the New Zealand pundits, was giving out during the week in one of the podcasts that the Swing Low, Sweet Chariot anthem that's sung by the English fans was, you know, drowning out the haka, and that's disrespect. But, you know, you have to say, like, haka, you know, people have to respond to that. You can't stop thousands of fans from singing, you know, Sweet Low Swing Chariot if you're going for England and the haka has been done. Just can't really, prevent that kind of thing. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're doing the haka, expect a response. You know, Ireland did it with the Fields of Athenry. So, you know, that's just the kind of response you're going to get. So you're going to have to grit your teeth and bear it. So probably going to be a pretty convincing New Zealand win. After being beaten, they're going to want to make another statement. So that's on at 3:10 p.m. Then after the Irish game is France versus Australia. So that is going to be, I suppose, another convincing win for France, you would think, because Australia just seemed to really be done and want to just get on the plane and go home and relax after playing a lot of international rugby. At the same time, I don't know, France looked a bit rusty against New Zealand. I wouldn't put, not against New Zealand, when they played South Africa and they were man up for that second half. It just seemed like it's not even the Dupont factor, just, you know, without him, they're not as good. But I just thought, you know, because they didn't send their A team down to New Zealand during summer, they are a bit rusty. They haven't played together in a good while. So could be closer than you think, you know. Then you've got, at the same time, you've got Italy versus Chile. Sorry, Chilean brothers are going to be over playing the Azzurri. That one is tough to call because I haven't seen Chile play recently, but Italy should be very happy with themselves. They did run South Africa very close last week for a good chunk of the game, so I think they'll be fired up for that. And then on Sunday, you've got Scotland versus Tonga at 1:40 p.m. Really feel for the Scots, especially if you're a Scots supporter, because they just seem to really give away this lead that they had against Argentina on Sunday. It was just a fascinating meltdown, really. You got to watch that game and just see this is not the way to manage a game when you're 21 points up. It was 21-0 to Scotland, and just bit by bit, Argentina got back in the game and won. And the Scottish fans were so disappointed. They were booing their team. I see booing all the time in football, but at a rugby game, it's quite rare, like a unanimous booing medley going on against your home team. They were just so shocked. You know, they were so let down by them. So yeah, it was just strange turnaround of events. The first half, Scotland were all over Argentina, playing really effective set piece rugby, really great tries, boom, boom, boom. And then Argentina, if there's any team that comes back from the dead, if there's any team that is the last one to know that they're beat, it's Argentina. One of my favorite teams from the Southern Hemisphere, hands down. They always front up, never turn your back on Argentina because they will punish you. A very passionate crowd, really big guys. They play technical rugby. They love the rugby, so can't say I'm too surprised. But yeah, so that's Scotland versus Tonga, who are going to be in the 2027 World Cup as well as Scotland. So that might be good. I haven't seen Tonga play in a while. And then you have England versus Argentina at 4:10 p.m. on Sunday. So both of those teams are riding high from a famous win. Argentina against Scotland and England against New Zealand. So I think that there'll be a good energy about that game, but England tend to have Argentina's number. They beat them really convincingly earlier on this year in the summer. I'm also thinking back to the World Cup where they had a really great group game. England played a great group encounter with Argentina, and just very similar to what they did last weekend. just controlled the game with these out of nowhere drop goals. And again, George Ford was the main puppet master of that, just put in a great performance. So I think England should have that quite convincingly. So that is the week, or should I say the weekend of rugby coming your way. Hope it's going to be good. Really hope Ireland give a good performance, even if they don't win. I think, you know, just a convincing good. They're going to have to really get in South Africa's face for this. Just like last year in Durban, where it was really like a battle royale. There's just so many people getting, you know, having to walk off the field from injuries. Just real kind of in-your-face rugby. No quarter held. So it's going to be a great way to end the internationals. It's kind of sad now, you know, internationals are over all of a sudden, but it's a great way to tip it all off. And then before you know it, we're back into the URC season. So it goes fast. We've got also just a shout out to the Irish football team who have qualified for the World Cup playoffs in March. Congratulations to them. They played a great game against Hungary, and Troy Parrott should never have to buy a pint ever again the rest of his life. He scored 3 goals against Hungary's 2, one in the very dying embers of the game. It was a famous, famous win. So again, I know it's a rugby podcast, wouldn't normally talk about football, but it's the World Cup, so you got to, you know, give dues where they're due. So well done to them. And also congratulations to 2 Cents Rugby. He is the guy that got me into rugby. He is a major podcaster, been around for years and years, a Kiwi pundit. 2 Cents Rugby is really good analysis, always very, very measured analysis, and just great to watch and report on rugby. Great way, if you're new to rugby, great person to watch. But he has just breached 100,000 subscribers. So massive congratulations to him. Couldn't happen to a better guy. So well done, Mark from 2 Cents Rugby. So that is what we have coming our way. I hope you like this video. Please like and subscribe and enjoy the rugby this weekend. Thanks. Bye.